on a journey into grace. Starting in September, there were several viewpoints into it. And I think it's good to have such a deep look into an important topic. For the amazing grace of God has come into our lives. His seeking grace looks for us and finds us. And by His grace we are saved from being separated from God. And now we can be devoted to Jesus and learn what it means to live daily with Him. Today we look upon the aspect of grace that enables us to live day by day with Christ. And we look into words from the Sermon on the Mount, the speech which became the most popular sermon of Jesus. At the beginning of this long sermon, Jesus says fundamental sentences like a declaration of faith. And he did this because, in the way of Hebrew thinking, the most important items are mentioned first. At the time Jesus is at the beginning of his public appearance, he's on the road in Galilee around with his disciples. And although there didn't exist things like radio or TV, the people know where he is. And they know he is quite a man who talks differently about God. A man who's able to heal people. And so we look at Matthew chapter 5, verses 1 and 2 first. Now, when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. More and more people come to see Jesus. What encouraged them to come? Even from the north of Israel, from other countries in the east. Perhaps they are curious, or they have a deep hunger to know more about God. Or perhaps they want to be healed, like it is mentioned in very many verses in the Bible. What has drawn you to Jesus? And what is it that leads us into prayer each and every day? To come to Him, to open our hearts. I sometimes, when I'm alone, talk loudly with Him because that's so natural for me and easy and so good to do. And the text tells us Jesus saw the crowds. He has a sense of what people need at that moment and in our time. So he goes to a place where he could be heard well when he talks. Isn't that good that Jesus sees each and every person, that he sees us? And he knows what we are going through. No matter what it is, he comes near. He even became a human like us. And he knows the struggles, he knows the worries. And sometimes when we don't find words in praying, we can say, Jesus, you know. He is the God with us. This is the grace which we have in our lives when we trust Jesus, which we can grab hold on. Jesus is with us. And then in the text he begins to speak. I read verses 3, 8 and 10 from the Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed in English, there is in Greek makarioi. That is like calling. Makarioi, be blessed. You can be happy when you are connected with God. Jesus says, my grace enables you to be glad in the connection with God. Perhaps you heard of Paul Watzlawick. He's an Austrian-American psychologist and philosopher. And in 1983, he published a book called The Pursuit of Unhappiness. There he writes about his observations, how people can deepen their bad feelings to feel much better. It's interesting to read, but I'm so glad that Jesus gives us a pursuit of happiness, uplifting words for our lives. And he emphasizes grace enables us to stay connected with God in each and every situation of our life. And that is the root. We can live, we can pray, we can stand things as individuals and as a group in a church. This is the root for everything we think, we do, we say, and how we see the world. Because we acknowledge that God is greater and wiser than us. The first blessing, blessed are the poor in spirit. I sometimes thought, oh no, I don't want to be poor. But this poor means give your pride of putting yourself in the place of God up. Don't put yourself in the center and main objective of your life. You are not God. Often I hear people say, oh, this is my way of thinking and my way of seeing things, my understanding, my making myself better. Poor in spirit means I recognize that God is above me. And it's about the wisdom that everything in our life is given to us. From Him, the Creator of life, who's merciful and true. And He enables us to decide to live with Him, in Him, out of Him, and through Him. Because we need Him. As more of ourself is relinquished to God, so follows greater peace and joy, says David Usage in his book about grace. We call this transformation holiness. One more word from David Usage. Holiness is to be so filled with the Spirit of Jesus that our mindset, motives, and attitudes are Christ-like. It's not about perfection, it's about being on a way, learning to be Christ-like. From one part to another, one step after another. For we are dealing in our times with so many new and unexpected things. I think I'm so needy to be connected to God, so I can live in this time. Sometimes I think, oh Lord, there's too much of everything, too much violence, too many catastrophes, too many people who have to flee from their homes, and a too near war. It's hard to cope with everything. And for me, it's helpful that I can pray like that. Lord, I need you. I'm yours, and I commit myself into your hand. I feel empty. Fill me. I think I can hardly understand this time and what's going on in this world. Be my wisdom. Be my strength. And thank you for your grace that holds me close. It's so good to seek to be near God and be aware that the Spirit of Jesus works in us. Grace works in us, and it is needed to empower, enable, and lead a holy life. John Wesley was utterly convinced that God's grace could transform a life from the inside out. And that is great, from the inside out. When I was a teenager, I was told you have to behave Christ-like. You have to wear things we say, don't do that, go there. But when we read the New Testament, it's about a transforming in the heart, that we are able to live differently. And that's something completely different from the direction. It's about from the innermost to the life we see. So Jesus said, blessed are the pure in heart. It's about pure in heart. Give my heart, my whole heart to Jesus, and then be transformed through Him, through the grace, through His love, and not through my actions. It is God who is at work in you, says Paul, enabling you both to will and to work for His good pleasure. So we can take the words of Jesus into our lives, we can trust Him, and then a spiritual renewal takes place in us and flows out of us. Matthew calls this the kingdom of heaven. In us, it becomes concrete. We are the ambassadors of the kingdom of heaven, just where we are. Where you are is the kingdom of heaven. So you can think like it's around you. It's only a little breath away. The kingdom of God is near. And Jesus causes people to let this kingdom happen. He empowers and we act. And this is the root for the things Jesus says in the other Beatitudes I read now. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. A second viewpoint. Grace enables us to stay connected with other people, with the surrounding of the earth, with the world we live in, to endure something, to be kind, to yearn for righteousness, to look mercifully at others, to strive for peace. Pretty easy, or? By looking to Jesus, we can turn to the world with its people and the living conditions. And Jesus shows how his love is already taking shape today, changing the world. We don't have the full load of every problem. We don't have to solve them. But let us ourselves equip from Jesus. The grace enables us to see what we can do. And Jesus does not say, you must. You have to make a real effort. He said, Makarioi, happy are you and blessed. Jesus wants us to be smileys in the world. He wants us to get involved into the lives of people, into conditions that are not good. He wants us to make his revolutionary love and mercy come alive for other people. When we only talk, they couldn't understand what the good gospel of Jesus is. When it comes alive, they can smell it, they can see it, they can make experiences with it. We are called to get on our feet, to participate in shaping God's world. His grace enables us to do so. John Wesley calls this the works of mercy. On one side is the spiritual life, and it is connected with the works of mercy to engage God's ministry and mission in the world. One word to the concept of righteousness in the Bible. Righteousness is not a legal concept of justice in the Bible, after which everyone gets what he deserves or needs. Righteousness rather means healthy relationships, a communion, standing together as God stands with his people, and acting because we know we are connected with one another. When someone acts righteous, it's according to his promises or the awareness that we are all creatures of God and that he wants to give us all space to live. Through grace, we are able to do so. Perhaps like Henri Dunant. He was a businessman, Christian, and in 1859 he saw the misery of the wounded of a military battle in northern Italy. He was shocked. People lying around and nobody looking after them. On his initiative, the International Committee of the Red Cross was founded in 1876. This brought him trouble in his hometown. He was ostracized by the fine people because he stood up for human rights, for the wounded. To this day, however, we see the important service rendered by the organizations initiated by Rue du Nord. Or perhaps you know Tony Rinaldo. He's from Australia, born 1957, with a feeling for God's creation. As a child, he was irritated and annoyed by very bare fields in his homeland due to cutting trees for industrial needs. That looked so sad, he thought. And he prayed with, I think, the age of 8, God, make me your instrument so that I can change something. He studied agricultural sciences and went to the organization World Vision as a missionary in the early 1980s. In Nigeria, however, he sees how hopeless people live. A dry land, little harvest, and with so many worries, they cannot listen to the good news of God's love. So Tony thinks something has to be done about their living conditions. He begins to plant trees, year after year after year, but they all dry up again. Then one day he breaks down with his car in the middle of nowhere. He thinks about what to do now, and looking into the landscape, he gets attention of something growing on the ground. He goes there, bends down, and is amazed to find out that there are all small shots of trees. He knows. How could that be? In a dry land, little trees. Tony finds out that there were trees. They were cut to make way for fields. Tree stumps and roots were left in the ground. And Tony sees the possibility of growing trees without planting them, simply by maintaining what is already there. So he develops a method that the local farmers could use for themselves to make trees grow. And also have enough firewood, an important item in this area. However, it takes a long time for the farmers to trust this white know-it-all and to try out the method. What effect did that have? It's amazing. You can see it here, are pictures in the book. You can see it. In the recent decades, the landscape has become green, where farmers use the methods. Under the trees, they are like our Obstwiesen. The trees are not so close. Under the trees, the crops grow much better than in any empty field, and the harvest is much bigger. The soil becomes fertile again. New water sources bubble, and the tree method is recognized worldwide and also successfully used in other countries by the United Nations. Amazing. And people have new courage to live and implement own ideas. For example, having bees. And they are open to hear sermons about God's love. Perhaps you have your own idea of doing something for people, for better living conditions, to implement hope in lives of people who don't have hope. Which people need your mercy or comfort, or your time, or an open ear? So we have to ask ourselves why the way we live faith sometimes brings little solidarity with others, and why we do not have a significantly higher sense of responsibility for the fate of other people. Are we perhaps retreating far too often into ourselves and our own life? What's holding us back? Perhaps we forget far too often that God's grace enables us to shape the conditions of life in this world. Or we forget the promise of Jesus that it is wonderful and to rejoice if we let Him speak into our life and let His love become concrete for others. Blessed are you, Makarioi. You can rejoice when you see God's heartbeat for this world and you are moved by it. So, the words of the Sermon on the Mount and the Beatitudes at the beginning set pretty high standards, I think, and demand a consistent life. Grace enables us to live this life as Jesus' disciples. It's not our strength, it's Him. Discipleship is a journey of grace that begins and ends with Jesus, who is the way, the truth, and the life. The goal of discipleship is to follow Jesus as we, by grace, become more and more like Him. So becoming like Jesus is our destiny, and grace guides us on this journey. Amen.